Hey everyone, welcome to another Deck Tech this week. This time it's Lazav, the Multifarious. If you're liking these deck techs, you're liking what the Commander's Brew is putting out there, why don't you go ahead and really crack into that subscribe button down there, ring that bell, and it'll let you know whenever we come up with something new.
Okay, let's break it down. Lazav the Multifarious. First of all, I looked up multifarious in the dictionary. It means having many varied parts or aspects.
Oh, okay, cool.
So, Lazav the Multifarious. It's a Guilds of Ravnica commander. He's Dimir, so that's black-blue for a legendary shapeshifter, 1/3. When Lazav the Multifarious enters the battlefield, surveil 1. So you'll get to throw something in the graveyard if you really want to. Lazav has one activated ability, no taps, X. Lazav, the Multifarious, becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with converted mana cost X, except its name is Lazav the Multifarious. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it has this ability. So you get to fill your graveyard with a bunch of stuff, and you get to pay to make Lazav a copy of any one of them, and you can pay as much as you want, as many times as you want, to keep changing what Lazav is, as long as it's in your graveyard there.
Yeah, right on. If you remember back to the set review, we weren't super hot on any of the commanders from Guilds of Ravnica. Lazav was one of the ones we thought you could at least still do some stuff with, right? Of course, the thing with Lazav is that you do have to pay like basically the full CMC of the creature it's becoming. So you want to keep those creatures low in cost, right? If we want to be able to like abuse some of their abilities and things like that.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things, people caught on pretty quick to the main strategy of Lazav. That is to have Lazav copy sort of an unblockable creature, attack, and then sort of transform Lazav into some nefarious monster that will cause your opponents to lose the game on combat damage, or some brutal broken creature that normally is hard to get into play. So we didn't want to go that route. Phage is the main one, yes. Phage. We're not going to do that, though.
No.
And we think that's perfect for the Dimir Guild anyway. We want your opponents to see Lazav, to expect you to put in a bunch of little 1/1 unblockables, and they're just waiting for Phage to get into your graveyard. But that's where they're mistaken, because we're not going to do that. What are we doing? I guess we're doing zombies, right?
What?
So, for example, one of the cards we have in here is Diregraph Colossus, 2 and a black for a zombie giant. It's 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each zombie card in your graveyard. So it's minimum a 2/2. If Lazav becomes this, you won't get any +1/+1 counters because Lazav did not enter the battlefield. But whenever you cast a zombie spell, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. So Lazav gets to do that for 3 mana. We get to, as we cast more zombies, we're putting more tokens onto the field. That sounds neat.
Right. Another good zombie is Plague Belcher, 2 and a black for a 5/4 with Menace. When Plague Belcher enters the battlefield, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Obviously, if Lazav becomes this creature, we're going to skip that because there's no ETB. But also, whenever another zombie you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life.
Yeah, so you can see how this plays out. We're making a bunch of tokens. This is actually a pretty cool one for Lazav to become anyway, because it's got Menace and it's 5/4. Yeah, that's not bad.
Exactly, that's not bad at all.
And then, of course, we got Diregraph Captain. 1 blue-black for a zombie soldier. It's 2/2 with Death Touch. Other zombie creatures get +1/+1. Whenever another zombie you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life. I mean, with Plague Belcher, this gets pretty ugly, but I think it's only appropriate that our commander can become the captain.
Yeah, being the captain is nice. Being able to pump zombies is nice. There's a couple other reasons in the deck why I want to do that. But well, you're also
that's what. So we're letting our opponents think we're a zombie deck, and our opponents are like, "Oh, it's just Lazav zombie." That's kind of neat.
Zombie tribal, big deal. I've played against that before. I know what to expect.
Until we resolve.
Patient Rebuilding. 3 black. Oh, it's black. 3 blue for the enchantment from M19 that says at the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Then you draw a card for each land card put into the graveyard this way.
Your opponents are probably going to say, "Wait,
you're
what's
milling
going on?"
me?"
Oh no, I just it's a good card draw engine, right? That's all it's in there for. I just want it. I want to draw cards.
It is that. Okay, fair. Okay, great. Well, you probably want to like reanimate something from my graveyard and make it a zombie for your zombie tribal deck, anyways.
Right, and then I'm gonna resolve Mirko Vosk, Mind Drinker. 3 blue-black for a legendary vampire, 2/4. He's got flying. Whenever Mirko Vosk, Mind Drinker, deals combat damage to a player, that player reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals 4 land cards, then puts those cards into his or her graveyard. So how many cards deep is 4 lands? 6? 8?
Yeah.
12?
Could be more, yeah. Colloquially known as grinding, as opposed to, so if just putting cards on the top is milling, this is like kind of slangily called grinding after the card Mind Grind.
Yeah. So now your opponents are like,
okay, well, that's a lot of milling, but I mean, I'm sure you probably, again, just want to reanimate some stuff. And then you go Jace's Archivist, 1 blue for the Vidalcan Wizard. That's a 2/2. You can pay blue and tap it, and each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So wait a second, what's going on here? We're milling, we're wheeling, we got zombie tribal happening, like, but you're not milling yourself here. You're milling other people. So like Lazav cares about stuff in your graveyard. Like, what is happening?
And that's exactly what we want your opponents to think. We want your opponents not to know what angle you're coming from, because we're coming from all the angles. That's what Dimir's all about.
A lot of different angles going on.
Oh, so many angles.
And, I mean, sure, the traditional, like, thoughts on a mill deck is that you got to be all in on mill, especially in Commander. You're trying to mill 4 people out of 100-card decks, which is, fairly true, but there's a lot of strong mill cards being created these days, and it leaves you a little bit of room to be able to like get a little flexible with that strategy. So we think though that this is the time to point out with the zombies a couple of neat moves.
Working on a neat move. Okay, so this first neat move that we want to talk about is more of a traditional Lazav neat move. So I want to talk about Hakon Stromgald Scourge. What am I even saying?
Stromgald Scourge.
If you're listening to this podcast or this video with the sound on and someone is listening, they're going to think I'm in trouble or something is wrong.
Hakon Stromgald Scourge. Is he saying help?
Does this person need medical attention?
Yeah, what's going on?
So Hakon is a 1 black legendary zombie knight. He's 3/3. You may play Hakon Stromgald Scourge from your graveyard, but not from anywhere else. Interesting. So we have to have a way to discard them, which is what Jace's Archivist is for. If we end up surveilling it away, that's great too. But we can only play it from the graveyard. Or, if it's in the graveyard, we can just have Lazav become Hakon. As long as Hakon is in play, you may play knight cards from your graveyard. When Hakon is put into a graveyard from play, you lose 2 life. Well, we don't have a lot of knight cards. I actually didn't look up if we have any incidental knights. I forgot to look that up.
Well, I mean, what would have been good to put in, I don't think we did, is Jozu. Jozu's a knight.
You know what? I thought about Josu, but the problem is, without an ETB, he's very underwhelming.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's true. Anyways, but Hakon lets us get knight cards. Well, I mean, it also lets you get cards that are considered knight cards.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? I mean Nameless Inversion, which is a tribal instant and the tribe that it is Shapeshifter, and it has Changeling as a result. So this card is every creature type, which is weird to say the least. But it's 1 and a black for a tribal instant that is also a Changeling. And so target creature gets +3/-3 and loses all creature types until end of turn. So if you get this in your graveyard along with Hakon, and then you get Hakon out or make Lazav a copy of him, you can now pay 1 and a black to cast Nameless Inversion over and over and over again.
Because it is a knight card.
Because it is technically a knight. Hakon does this with some other with some other cool cards too in other color combinations. Like I think what's it called? Crib Swap is another great one.
Sure.
Great example that our friend Ben showed us. You're constantly you're exiling cards because it's also a tribal instant. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. That's really neat. So that's
cool.
The first neat move.
Yeah.
The next one we have here is Disciple of Deceit. This is a really cool card from Dragon's Maze, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's not. It's not. It's from
Journey to Nyx.
Journey to Nyx, right? I can never remember that one. I remember Theros and Born of the Gods, but I never it feels like I'd spent no time with Journey into Nyx. But it's the blue and a black creature. It's a human rogue. It's a 1/3, and it has an inspired. So whenever a Disciple of Deceit becomes untapped, you may discard a non-land card. If you do, search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as that card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. So basically, it's kind of a throwback to the old Transmute from original Ravnica. And what it does is, so yeah, you get to toss like a 3 CMC card and then look for another 3 CMC card in your deck. So it's a little bit of a tutor, although not like, it's not an unconditional tutor, obviously, right? You need to have the same CMC for cards, and also discarding cards with Lazav is exactly what we want to do. So
you discard a 3 CMC, you can go throw Hack-On in the graveyard.
Exactly.
Do a 2. The beauty of Disciple of Deceit is that Lazav can tap for other reasons and then become Disciple for just 2 and untap to get that trigger.
Exactly. So you might do this on someone's end step to become Disciple, untap on when your turn comes back around, and then switch them over into something else. This is a good example also of one of those cheap creature cards that you want, that you can kind of flip Lazav back and forth. It's one thing that we didn't, realize, is that ability that Lazav has to swap back and forth between cheap costed creatures is actually pretty cool little ability that he has.
Yeah, he's like a supercharged Mirage Mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this next one is a really big, neat move because this is kind of one of our main win conditions.
Oh yeah. Okay, so think back to the zombie half of the deck. The deck that our opponents think we're all zombies. We mentioned a couple of zombie lords that are pumping up zombies. Lazav can become various types of zombies. Plague Belcher, Diagraph Captain. Our opponents are losing life when zombies die. So we're going to create Undead Alchemist. 3 and a blue for a zombie. It's 4/2. If a zombie you control would deal combat damage to a player, instead, that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. That's already both zombie and mill. So get a load of this. Whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from their library, exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So you can see how this is playing out. If we hit our opponent for, let's say, about 10 zombie damage, let's say, Undead Alchemist, maybe Lazav as a Menace 5/4, something like that, they're going to mill about 10 cards, or however much damage you do. And for every creature that they mill, we're going to get another zombie token. So, and that, if our zombies are being pumped by +2/+2, maybe even more, we're putting dozens of power and toughness onto the battlefield after that combat step in the form of zombie tokens.
Mm-hmm. And then, if you want to get into it, right, it's whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from his or her library, so that's how we get those zombies. Well,
yeah, I didn't clarify.
Yeah.
It's not just combat damage.
Right. Exactly.
Like if you mill your opponents for any other reason. Sorry. Yeah.
It's funny because on the video I keep switching to that card too. So the video people know what's coming up, but the audio people don't. Well, I'm just going to say it. Altar of Dementia. Why not do that? Right? So when you sack a creature, target player puts a number of cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So any way they mill, that's how we're going to get those zombies. Well, Altar of Dementia, you can sack one of those zombies. Like, it's a 2/2, but like say it's getting buffed into a 3/3. They're going to mill 3 cards. If any of those is a creature, that's another zombie. And that creates, it's not an infinite combo, but it can be enough to kill someone or at least get them down quite a bit, right? And again, if there's even more buffs happening, or if you have a board full of zombies, things can get pretty nasty with this little combo of the Undead Alchemist and Altar of Dementia. This is actually one we featured on the show before. I think it's from, and John and I both like remembered doing this, but I think it's from one of our very earliest episodes. I think it's from one of our, I think it's from the Mimeoplasm episode, very early.
Our best estimate is that's under 10, in the first 10.
Yeah, in the first 10 episodes, I think we featured these two cards as well. But yeah, it's because it's a cool, powerful little combo.
And the cool thing about this in a Lazav deck, in my opinion, is that you can make Lazav a copy of Undead Alchemist, so that's happening. Mm-hmm. And if you can reanimate Undead Alchemist and have double the effect. Doing damage and milling is a replacement effect. So you don't get to double the mill on combat damage, but anytime you mill a creature, then you get 2 zombie creature tokens.
Exactly. Yeah, and that can just get out of control.
Yeah.
Neat move.
Very neat move. What's another neat move we got in here?
Oh, another neat move here is Tree of Perdition.
This is the neat move.
This mythic from... what is it from? Eldritch Moon.
Moon.
3 and a black for the 0/13 creature plant. Has Defender, and it taps, and it says exchange target opponent's life total with Tree of Perdition's toughness. So already, right out of the bat, we know that Lazav can become a Tree of Perdition, and his toughness is only 3. So right there, if we have Lazav become a Tree of... If we have Lazav become Tree of Perdition, he's a 0/13, right? But what we can do is we can put that trigger on the stack, Tree of Perditions. So tap him. We're going to exchange life total with Lazav's toughness, which is 13 because he does become an actual copy of this card. But then
he's an actual tree.
Yeah. Then we can switch it into something with less toughness. Like I was thinking earlier, Lazav can do it. But anyways, you switch it with, like, I don't know, the 4/2. You switch it with Undead Alchemist, and all of a sudden that trigger now sees Lazav's toughness as 2, so it's going to switch it with that. So you can just put someone's life total at 2. Now, I'm pretty sure that does that, right? Like there's nothing I see that would make that not happen.
No, you're going to tap Lazav as a Tree of Perdition.
Yeah.
And put the trigger you're going to put the activated ability on the stack. And in response, you're going to activate Lazav's ability and change him into like a 2-drop, something that has like low toughness.
Yeah. So
the first thing that resolves is Lazav will become that new thing. And the second thing that will resolve is that you're going to trade an opponent's life total with whatever toughness Lazav then has. The only thing that would stop it is if whenever things want to exchange from a rules point of view, if one of the things is not available to exchange anymore, then the whole thing is canceled.
Right. And the fact that you change this from Tree of Perdition to something else doesn't matter, right? Because essentially when we see a card's name and it's like an ability like this, it just means this card or whatever, right?
Right. It's still saying, I'm going to trade my toughness. They write out Tree of Perdition just...
Right.
I don't know why.
I think it's probably easier. It's generally, I bet you it's easier.
I bet you're
but that's a pretty neat move. You can
neat move.
Put someone at 2 life or 3, 4 life, whatever, right? As long as it's under 13, you're doing good work there.
Well, and let's think about this too. Like if you've got 6 or more mana available and Lazav is untapped as something else, and your opponent is being like, oh, should I let this damage in? Yeah, I guess I'll take 4. You can be like, okay, before we go to damage, after you've declared no blockers, but before damage, I'm going to spend to put Lazav into a Tree of Perdition. I'm going to tap it. I'm going to now spend to put him as a 2 toughness thing, and now you die.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have Tree of Perdition in your graveyard and just anything else, I guess. So it's not like it's that hard. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Tree of Perdition's a 4 CMC. If you have another 4 CMC, chuck it to Disciple and then put the tree in your graveyard. Like, that Disciple is... That's true. That's
maybe
true.
Maybe it deserves a spot on the top 3. I don't know.
That's legit. There you go. Pretty mean little combination, but Tree of Perdition gets it done.
I want to highlight another neat move that is just a neat card really on its own, but I think Blackblade Reforged is so strong in this deck. It's a 2-mana legendary equipment from Dominaria, and you can equip it to a legendary for 3 or equip it to a non-legendary for 7. An equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. That's a lot of... That's going to be big, right? You know, very often as we get to like the end games of Commander, you know, the players have like 8, 9, maybe 10 mana on the battlefield. Equipping Lazav, who will always be legendary, with this Blackblade is amazing. And we can, if we're getting it with Menace, if we're doing zombie damage, or whatever, this is going to do a ton of damage and could make Lazav into the Voltron commander that we were trying to avoid.
We're kind of trying to not do. But yeah, he just kind of lends himself to it sometimes. And especially if there's any cards, I think we have some in here. I don't know, maybe we didn't even include them, but there's some, like, whenever something hits, maybe they mill or things like that, right? That's gonna play into Blackblade Reforged being even better than it looks. And
like a Mirko Vosk wearing this.
Yeah, although that won't change what Mirko Vosk does. Like if you put like this on Zadek.
Oh yeah,
like Lazav as Zadek or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah. There you go. A couple of nice, neat moves.
Some very neat moves.
This is an interesting deck because, you know, we've seen zombie decks before. We've even seen mill decks before. But this mix of them, while not exactly like, it's not foreign to Dimir to have these two things meet up. I mean, there are cards that just do it. I mean, look at Undead Alchemist. But having them kind of split time and fuel each other in a different way than you would expect. Did you find anything that, like, any weird cards, like surprise or discoveries? Did we find anything that sort of we've never known about? I know we found some things.
Yeah, so the first surprise and discovery I want to talk about is not necessarily perfect for this deck specifically, but I just think it's worth mentioning in general. Where did it come from? It came from Darksteel. It's called Synod Artificer. 2 and a blue for a Vedalken Artificer. It's 1/2, and it has 2 abilities. X, tap X target non-creature artifacts, or X tap untap X target non-creature artifacts. So if you have a lot of mana rocks that are generating more than 1 mana, you can spend, you got 3 rocks, spend 3 mana, untap them. You're going to profit mana that way. And in an emergency, if you really needed to, you could, in other players' upkeeps, like a one specific player, just tap all of their mana rocks so that they have less to do if you're about to make your endgame play next turn or something.
Yeah, this card is like essentially, we all know like the Candelabra, Thanos,
right?
Candelabra, crazy like old card and everything worth all this money.
About $100,000.
Yeah, there's the Magus of the Candelabra, which is worth considerably less money, and it does this to lands. And it's kind of hard to get lands that tap for more than one, so it's kind of like, unless you're very dedicated around that can be tough to actually utilize properly. Whereas a lot of mana rocks do create more than 1 mana, right? Like most of the good ones do. So Synod Artificer in the right deck, like you said, like it's not exactly tuned for this deck. Like we've got those mana rocks in here, but we're not. I don't like this card can be fine, but it can also like do not that much if you don't have those artifacts, obviously. But in the right deck, this card can be massive and just create so much mana for you that I think this is like this can be a really powerful card. This is
yeah.
Neat. And it's like a gumball. It is actually between 18 and 35 cents, which is pretty cool. Especially now, if you can like untap it and do it again, like things just get nutty with this guy.
I like to look at this kind of effect as just like, if you've got 2 mana rocks out, this thing says tap, add 3 or 4 mana to your mana pool.
Yeah,
and with a few more artifacts, like I would love a creature that says tap, add 8 mana to my mana pool. It's like, yes, please.
Yeah, no problem. Exactly. Yeah, you don't need a lot for this to happen. That's for sure. Yeah. Okay, and there's another one that I wanted to mention. This one specifically goes really well in decks where you're milling yourself, or where people are milling you, I suppose. It's called Pedantic Learning. It's 2 blue for an enchantment, and it says whenever a land card is put into your graveyard from your library, you may pay 1, and if you do, draw a card. So a lot of times, if you get something, Dreamborn Muse is a great card to sort of pair up with this, right? So anytime that happens, you just pay 1. And it's per like mill, basically, right? So like if something says like mill you 3, I think it's like, is it just one? Like I'm not sure.
I think you get credit for each land.
Is it? Okay, I thought that, but then I played it in Forge and it didn't seem to do that. But maybe I just wasn't paying attention and it didn't mill more than one land, maybe. Anyways, so something like Dreamborn Muse mills everyone on their upkeep for as many cards as they have in their hand. So this is going to hit you for like, 3, 4 cards, whatever. And then, the number of lands, you can pay an additional 1 and draw even more cards. It's awesome with stuff like that. It's great. So
even Lazav's little Surveil 1 trigger is just like a pop a land,
absolutely.
grab a card.
You'll oftentimes find yourself popping that land right in the graveyard or right into the graveyard and then drawing a card off of it. And then, it's a land anyway. So whatever, and that's like the worst case scenario. So this card could be really good if you're ever milling yourself. If that's ever part of the strategy, I'd say you got to throw a Pedantic Learning in your deck. It kind of becomes like a Rhystic Study almost.
Yeah, I feel like any old Sidisi decks would want these. Like every time you attack, you're flipping 3 over in your graveyard, like chance to draw a bunch there.
And you always
what a cool find.
And you always want to hit creatures with those things, right? Because they care about creatures going to the graveyard. And you're always like, no, man, I milled like 2 lands. It's like, well, now you're happy to mill lands. It's great.
Yeah.
And I just said Rhystic Study, and I meant Mind's Eye, because Mind's Eye is the one where you pay.
Oh, okay.
But that's also a very good card. Anyways, Pedantic Learning.
Good, yeah.
Cool.
I looked up what Multifarious earlier did. What does pedantic mean?
That's a
pedantic is an adjective that means of or like a pendant. That doesn't sound right.
That's I'm sure that's also true. But it's like a
Oh, okay. So they used it in a sentence and it said many of these essays are long, dense, and too pedantic to hold great appeal.
I was thinking they waver in their what they're doing, right?
Yeah, they're not clear. They're back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, pendant. I guess it's kind of like a pendant, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Well,
okay. Great. I mean, it seems like they used the definition in the word in the definition, which is a no-no, but okay.
What site are you using? Okay. Well, that being said, let's take a look at the old budget report here. Oh man, something's wrong with the budget report machine.
Oh, let's smack it a couple times. This is where we take all of the cards and we think we know what they're charging, but the numbers in the corner of the bills are secretly other numbers.
What? Oh man, I'm in this foreign country and I don't know what numbers are. That's where that would happen, I feel like.
Oh yeah, like what?
That looks like a 5.
A blue one?
Here.
Does this cost a blue one?
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, that means 12 here. Oh, weird. Okay.
Which one's bigger? So this deck, I mean, we are still a budget podcast, but we're not under a strict budget restrictions, but we're still going to keep it low. But I would say this is on the higher side of what we've been doing lately.
Did you put this in with the cuts that we made?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it still is that much. Okay.
Yeah. So this came out to about $120.
Oh, I have 110 here.
110. Okay. So 110, 120. Between those two. And half of the value of the deck, that is to say about $50-$60, lies within 10 cards. $50 for 10 cards, that's a lot. These are some expensive cards. So, and I think it has to do with like some of these mill cards, some of these mill decks, black, blue, even some of the zombie cards we use too. Those decks are becoming solved. Like a dedicated black blue mill deck is becoming solved where people are like, these are the best cards that you are to use, period.
Yeah.
So those cards just keep creeping up. For example, Geth, Lord of the Vault, most expensive card in the deck. This is about $11 or $12. 4 black for a legendary zombie. It has Intimidate, and it has an activated ability, X black. Put target artifact or creature card with converted mana cost X from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tapped. Then that player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So basically, you get to pay black plus the CMC of any creature or artifact. You get it, and they mill that much. In addition, it's also a zombie. It reanimates. It kind of does everything, so it's no wonder the price has gotten that high.
And it's a 5/5, so it's like a decent sized body for the price you're paying on top of everything, which is great.
Yeah, it's got intimidate, so it's hard to block.
Yeah, like he does it all. It's like the setup cost here is that like maybe is that you kind of either had to kill something that they owned already or you milled them once already. So it's pretty low, and that makes them pretty good.
Yeah,
you're paying for it, but it's a nice ability considering that he kind of fuels himself. Yeah, Geth is great, but he's like you said, he's about $10. So if you wanted to save some money, there's no shortage of reanimate effects available in these colors, and some obviously are not like as good as this, but this it's a way to save some dough for sure.
Yeah.
The second most expensive card is Relentless Dead, coming in at what? About $750-ish, something like that. It's 2 black for a 2/2. It's a zombie. It has menace. And it says when Relentless Dead dies, you may pay black. If you do, return it to its owner's hand. And it also says when Relentless Dead dies, you may pay X. And if you do, return another target zombie creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. So the main reason this is in this deck is because we want this guy in our graveyard, because whenever he sort of performs like a protective shield kind of around Lazav, right? So what you can do is turn, if you leave 3 mana up, 3 black mana specifically, or no, actually, I guess just one of them has to be black. You can turn Lazav into Relentless Dead if he's going to die, and then that death trigger will happen, and then you can pay the black and return it back to your hand, so that you're not having to let it go to the command zone and have it cost a bunch every time.
Yeah, it's a nice way to save Lazav. If you have even more mana open, you can also pay X and return another zombie from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Yeah, with it, right?
Yeah, so like this card does a lot of things. Again, it's highly utility. It's a cheap card. It's efficient. So it's, that's why it's pretty expensive. This is one I would vote to keep. If you had to make a cut so far, maybe cut Geth, find another card to do it. But Relentless Dead, I think, should stay.
I admit, I'm a little surprised this card is still this much money. I mean, it is a mythic rare, but I remember when this came out, people were really stoked about it. There was like a mono black zombies deck for a little bit. This spiked really high. I had one. I sold it. And sold for like 20 something bucks.
Ooh, good for you.
Was happy with that, and now I was like, well, this card's going to be a couple bucks, maybe, but it's still around $7. So,
you would have made 14.
Yeah, it's so
like
definitely
that.
made some decent scratch there.
Yeah.
What's the third one?
Third most expensive card is Phoenix, God of Deception. 3 blue black, legendary creature enchantment, God, indestructible, 4/7. Phoenix is the mill commander, traditionally, one of the top mill commanders. As long as your devotion to blue and black is less than 7, Phoenix isn't a creature. Phoenix would probably be a creature in most board states that we have going, I suspect. But either way, we can just make Lazav become Phoenix from the graveyard. Also a nice thing to have in your graveyard to save Lazav from destruction, from mass destruction.
Yes, definitely.
Lazav gets indestructible.
And even but when it becomes, it's funny, when he becomes Phoenix, if you don't have the devotion, he's no longer a creature, right?
But he still has the ability.
Yeah.
So that's actually good on a couple angles.
Yeah, that's pretty great. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
So Phoenix, creatures you control have tap. Target player puts the top X cards of their library into their graveyard, where X is this creature's toughness. So Phoenix or Lazav themselves can make a person mill 7. If you've got our Undead Alchemist and our Altar of Dementia combo going, you can tap one of them. Oh, I guess they'd have to have haste to be able to do that. So
yeah, that's true, work. Because of the way that Phoenix gives them the ability, they do need haste. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so yeah, the Phoenix is a $7 card, $8, something like that. That's how decks get expensive. Like every card is like, this one's 5, this one's 8, this one's 10. It doesn't take much for a deck to be like $200.
Yeah, exactly. And we're still thinking of budget here. We don't stick to the strict $50 budget anymore, but we are still thinking of budget and not just jamming in $10, $20 cards everywhere, right? Like we will run the odd $8 to $10 card at this point if we feel like it's really good. So, and we get to talk about stuff like Geth and Phoenix now.
Yeah,
which is cool.
So what are the 3 stars?
Yeah, the 3 stars. So the best cards, the ones that really work with this strategy, this kind of weird mix, this Dimir hybrid kind of sneaky mix of strategies. Number 3 is Geth, Lord of the Vault. Like we said, this guy's really good. 6 mana for the 5/5 with Intimidate. he's milling, he's getting something back, he's reanimating. Like, he does it all. He does everything you want to do here. It's only opponent's graveyard, so he can't mill you yourself. But this is still really good. We want to mill. Like, I kind of feel like the way this deck works is like you mill one person out, and then that enables the rest of your strategy. And hopefully you can get a board of zombies to either then get your Undead Alchemist or just strictly overwhelm someone else with zombies. So hopefully you can take care of one or two people while holding off that third person.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah.
It's neat to, like, so you're attacking the table on different levels. I think that's cool.
It is cool, and yeah, it's neat. So yeah, Geth, great card, number 3 star.
Number 2 star, Psychic Corrosion, 2 and a blue for an enchantment. This is brand new from M19. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. That's a pretty slick effect. You're going to be drawing a lot of cards. We have other ways to draw more cards. Pedantic Learning, just to name one. There's a card we didn't talk about, but there's 2 modes. I think it's called Fascination. One mode, it's all blue X. One mode is everyone at the table draws that many cards, or everyone at the table mills that many cards. So if you have Psychic Corrosion and you pick draw, then everyone draws 10 cards, and then everyone else mills 20 cards. Yeah, addition.
Yeah, it's almost like, I mean, really, that's a bit of a neat move right there with those 2 cards. But yeah, Psychic Corrosion does that with a lot of cards in here, and obviously you get your blue deck is jam packed with card draw, so it's going to be great.
Doesn't the Psychic Corrosion guy look a little bit like Harrison Ford?
Ooh, wow.
Like, obviously the top of his head is getting messed up, but just look at the mouth area, like the bottom of it. That could be like old Harrison Ford.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Anyways, the number 1 star of the deck is no stranger to these strategies. It's Consuming Aberration. 3 blue, black for the creature horror that has a power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyards. This guy gets real big real quick. And whenever you cast a spell, each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals a land card and then puts those cards into his or her graveyard. So honestly, these 2 abilities obviously support each other, but this is probably more beneficial for the mill side of him that he does, right? And then he just happens to get to be this massively huge monster. So Consuming Aberration is great. I mean, Lazav can become a copy of him for 5. Like this, like,
that if Lazav is able to transform into a Consuming Aberration after not being blocked, your opponent will surely take 21 commander damage.
Yes, easily, exactly. So this guy's great on all angles. He's amazing in your graveyard, out of your graveyard. He does it all. So Consuming Aberration, fantastic. The only thing that could have made him better is if he was a zombie.
Ooh, yeah, so close.
But instead, he's just a horror.
Just a horror.
And a very good one at that. Well, great.
Wow. That's the deck. What do you think, Andy? So we weren't too keen on this commander going in. We thought that the strategy was a bit too straightforward, that there wasn't a lot of, outside of your typical sort of Necrotic Ooze type of combos, just put a bunch of tappers and untappers and win kind of thing.
Yeah.
Outside of that, but I think we came up with something pretty fun here.
We did come up with something pretty fun. I'm very interested to see how effective this would be. I know we tested a tiny bit with this deck, and I saw some of the synergies come into play, and then I saw some of the synergies kind of like fizzle kind of without the other supporting cards we needed. So it's just interesting as to like, should we maybe toss an extra tutor or 2 in here just to make sure you get, some key pieces when you need them? And the one good thing I like about it is that no one piece is more key than another, really. Like, Undead Alchemist is nice to have because it does kind of everything. But if you have, say, a Pedantic Learning out, then you'd go get like a Dreamborn Muse, right? Like, that would be the thing you would tutor for. Or if you had, any other piece, you'd go get the other piece that works the best with it. So actually, I like that flexibility. And in that land, like in that world, the tutor, I think, is less of a answer and more of like it creates the questions that your opponents then have to answer, which I think is cool.
Yeah. Well, and now that you got me thinking about tutors, so there's that new one that has Undergrowth on it that but it can only find black cards.
Yes, yeah.
So not all the cards we want are black cards. We want some blue ones. But then I'm also, since we're doing a lot of self-milling, I'm reminded of that one that it has spell mastery. If it costs 5, but you get 3 back if you have spell mastery. So it is effectively a 2-mana tutor at the end of the day, as long as you're spending that mana this turn, which we probably will because we went to go get something.
Yeah, that I always forget the name of Dark Petition, which is the card. But I always forget the name of that card. I just looked it up. Like, I'm not going to pretend like it was some thing where I was like, I always forget it, but here's the name. No, I immediately had to look it up because I always forget the name. Dark Petition. Great tutor. Love this card. This is
what
really
do you think of this one? Wait, didn't one come out just in M19 where you get to you tutor for 1 card to your hand and 1 to your graveyard? That would be perfect in this deck.
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah, yes, it did. It's one that I always just never take that card in draft, so I don't remember. Because
it costs like 5. It's too expensive, but like for this deck, maybe that's exactly what we want. We want 1 in our hand, 1 in the graveyard, and let's go to Shenanigans Town.
Yeah, what is that card?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know if it's from. Is it from M19?
It must be. I also fully don't know what it is. Is it an instant or a sorcery?
I think it's got to be a sorcery. All these tutors are always sorceries, right?
I think. Anyways, I don't know. Yeah, I have no clue. But anyways, yeah, that would be a really good card for this one. I was thinking it's it basically does what Jared's the 1 green-black tutor that Golgari has, but it's not just creatures, it's any card. Anyways, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a deck. I think I'd like to play with it a bit and see like what angle it needs to sort of embrace a bit more, whether it's like including more zombies or it's including more of the like mill thing. I think it might need a little bit more of the self mill, because I think there's some cards in here that will really benefit from that. And we want to mill. I think like milling everyone is kind of what this deck wants to do a bit. And interestingly enough, we did find this just as we close out here and end the show. There are no cards that for when I'm like, for me as a player, if I mill myself, that everyone else has to mill also. Yeah. That's not like, I thought that would be amazing. I was like, oh, there must be a card that does that. And I couldn't
sort of enchantment
find it. So like maybe I just didn't use the right wording. I looked and I checked some other cards. And I tried to find cards like the wording that I think they would use. I didn't find anything. So if anyone does know of a card like that, let us know in the comments or message us over on Twitter at Commanders Brew. Let us know if there's a card that does that. But we were speculating that maybe the reason there isn't a card that does that is because it would be too easy to, maybe it'd be like way too easy to mill yourself and mill everyone out, and then you wouldn't lose because it's, then it goes to everyone else's turn first.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be too easy. Interesting.
I don't know.
Anyways, let us know if there's a card that does that, because we'd like to use it. And maybe it's just not in these colors, although I find that would be really strange. How would it not be in blue-black? Okay. Well, yeah. Neat, cool deck. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Big thanks to all our patrons who make these episodes possible.
Yeah, and if you want to check out more comedy videos, check out our Brews News playlist.
Make sure you follow us on Twitch TV to see when we play live.
If you want to chat with us, head over to Twitter. We're at Commanders Brew.
And please hit subscribe to ding the bell and find out when we got new stuff coming out.
See you next time.
Bye.